If you go pitch an idea for a startup and everybody thinks it's a good idea, it's actually going to be a bad company to build because there's too much consensus. But because you have this unique insight, you see it as a good idea. As a founder, your job is to go and incubate new functions. And then right at the moment you start getting good at it is the moment you hire somebody. Is really the only role in the company where you consistently are allowed to be bad at whatever it is you're doing. If you're the dinosaur, you don't know you're the dinosaur.
Yeah.
What can we decide by tomorrow? What can we build by like Wednesday or Thursday? And so the cadence that actually we operate on, the week is not the shortest timeline, it's actually the biggest timeline in a sense.
But is there a cost to moving that fast? What do you give up? Michael Grinich is building the company powering the enterprise adoption of AI. Nearly any AI company you can think of, OpenAI, XAI, Anthropic, Sierra, Cursor, the list is endless, is a customer of WorkOS. But I'm especially excited to have him here today because of our personal relationship. The dream of a VC is to partner with someone extremely talented and ambitious and be on a long journey with them through good days and tough ones. My journey with Michael is one of those. He's unbelievably smart, ambitious, tenacious, urgent while being calm at the same time. Working with Michael has made me better at my job. With WorkOS, Michael has built an accelerating 50 million ARR business with no CRO, no VP of sales, no marketing department, just 3 sales reps. It's a company built by developers for developers. We'll dive into all this and more today. Michael, welcome to the show. So let's start at the beginning of WorkOS. So before WorkOS existed, you were an application layer builder, building an email client, and were pretty design obsessed. How does one go from a design obsessed application layer builder to a middleware product builder for a product that you yourself have described as most would think to be boring?
Yeah, WorkOS isn't exactly the thing that kids wake up, in the morning excited to build. You want to be an astronaut, you want to be a firefighter, you want to go build infrastructure for enterprise SaaS companies. It came from that experience. So I had started this company to try to change the way people communicate. I had been obsessed with email for years, and back when I was an undergrad at MIT, everything went through email. This is before Slack, so it was like the tool that everybody used to do their job. And so started a company to change how people communicate. Built this product, and I was kind of the quintessential like engineer, product minded guy, building a product that was for me. I had these like sketchbooks full of ideas and ways to change how people like interact with their mailbox and do it on Teams and collaborate. So raise a bunch of money, hire a bunch of great people, build this product that we just obsessively crafted. I've told this story before, but I spent a couple days in a studio of an electronic musician making like the notification sound. Because, you hear that all the time for email. And so spent all this time on the product experience, launched it, and then people loved it because the product was really great. But then when we tried to actually scale it to customers, to actually businesses, was the first time I started talking to procurement and security and IT and all these people that end up like being the ones to buy software. My friend now, Alon Frank, who did this at Slack. He was the enterprise product lead at Slack. He calls this the difference between the user and the chooser. It's these 2 different worlds. And because we hadn't built anything for the IT person, the chooser, we essentially didn't have any of the enterprise capabilities needed to go sell to these companies. And it meant that they shut us down. They said, if you're touching email, we have to get rid of this. It was a huge blow to the growth of the product. That was very frustrating. After spending years pouring like my heart into the design of this thing, to essentially have it not succeed commercially because of this, set of missing things. And that sent me on this journey to go learn what does it take to become enterprise ready and to grow up market. And WorkOS as a company is actually just a reaction to that, to help other companies solve these problems. We've been doing it for a while. Like I mentioned, the company's 7 years old now. But now what we're finding is it's this amazing fit for AI products that are all going up market and growing extremely fast. So we're sort of like a pre-AI company, pre-AI infrastructure company that's now been accelerated based on the AI wave.
Walk me through that year. So you took a year off between Nihilus and WorkOS, and you had this notebook of ideas. I remember you'd mentioned deep fake videos and tech to de-radicalize people, all of that. So you had this, but also you were probably processing what happened in your last startup and what do you want your next startup to look like? Like, what was that year like? What was going through your head? Was it primarily focused on what's next, or some philosophical things also changed for you as a founder?
Yeah, I wasn't even sure I wanted to start another company, to be
Mm.
honest. I spent a couple months in Thailand, like doing Muay Thai and like wandering around. I got really into aerospace. And so I went and saw all the space shuttles that still exist and went to a rocket launch. And it's just kind of like trying to follow my nose. And I thought about like, joining a company or a growing startup or even going into VC. I had some friends that were interested in hiring me to do that. But this problem just kind of stuck with me. I mean,
Yeah.
of all the different ideas I had, I kind of was still bothered by this thing where I had felt like we had done all the right things to build the product, but ultimately it wasn't successful. And when I saw the convergence of this space, I knew if I was going to do another startup, I wanted the market to be like enormous. Like
Yeah.
I think there's no way to outrun a small TAM. You just get stuck. And now that I do a bunch of small angel investing, I see this all the time. Like small TAM kills companies, you
Yeah.
know? So I was like, it needs to be an enormous TAM. I wanted to find an area that I could actually like sell to developers. And the reason why is we had built some developer stuff at Nihilist. It's what the company eventually turned into. And I just really liked it. I love building APIs. I mean, what engineer doesn't love building for yourself? And so that was extremely compelling. And the consumption-based business model behind it, I had seen products like Twilio, what they had done, and that business model
Yeah.
slow to start and then accelerates on the backside. And then I wanted to find an industry that hadn't had like a market defining moment. And my gold star there, kind of North Star was Stripe. So before Stripe, fintech was like not an exciting thing to work on. It was like not exciting from a lot of different dimensions. It certainly wasn't appealing to go build. And post Stripe, it's very exciting. There was like, Robinhood and all these and Coinbase and all these other things that were built, in that way too. And so I wanted to find a market that had all those characteristics. And funny enough, like IT had that. It was very stale. Even the word IT doesn't really mean
Yeah.
anything, and it hadn't had the like Stripe moment as part of it. Someone
But
bringing that
one of
craft.
your criteria is that the idea should look bad. Can you
Yeah,
double click on that? Why should it look bad?
I think when I was intersecting these ideas, like giant market hasn't had a transformational moment before. And then the third one is I think it needs to come from some personal insight that you have had. You have to have some unique information. If you're just sitting around a table trying to come up with ideas and all you have available to you is like the internet, so does everybody else, right? And so you're not going to have any like alpha in that, right? You have to find something you have a unique insight. And the best place to draw from that is your personal experience. So whatever you've had. And I had that with the email client with the
Yeah.
enterprise ready set. So you do all these things. I think actually if you go pitch an idea for a startup and everybody thinks it's a good idea, it's actually going to be a bad company to build because there's too much consensus. And what that means is there'll be too many competitors early on and you won't have, enough like singularity to build the organization around. It's sort of like, I have this like lemon tree in my backyard and if you don't go like prune some of the buds, you won't get a full size lemon because you get like 10 tiny lemons and they all kind of taste bad. You need one big
Yeah.
lemon with all the juice in it. And the way to do that is to like to discourage competitors. So have something that everybody else thinks is a bad idea, but because you have this unique insight, you see it as a good idea.
Actually, let's double click on that. How do you know though? Because sometimes a bad idea is actually a bad idea. So how do you kind of discern between a bunch of these so-called smart VCs are telling you, hey, this is not a good idea. How how do you have the confidence to say, no, I see something that others don't?
I think ultimately that's like a judgment call. It
Mm.
has to be based on your own personal,
Yeah.
kind of faith and conviction. Good ideas, the best ideas always start off looking as bad ideas. I think Paul Graham wrote a whole essay on this. Also, bad ideas start off looking as bad
Yeah.
ideas and they stay bad ideas. And so you have to have this like conviction as to why your idea is actually not bad. And I think the way to break it down is like what are the beliefs you have or the things that need to be true in order for that bad idea to actually be a good idea? What are the assumptions underlying it that will allow it to grow? And for us, I think at WorkOS, it was that the incumbents wouldn't build this as a product, that we were going to go after it with more of a developer led angle versus an IT led angle. And that we thought the explosion in SaaS and new applications was going to continue to grow. It was
Yeah.
like that the market was going to get much, much bigger. You want to build in growth markets. So I think founders should be able to articulate that.
Yeah.
But ideally, like a good way to do it is to base it on personal insight. I even had this experience with the WorkOS idea. I just thought somebody else would build it. It was so obvious to me as a need that I spent a while looking around, being like, certainly someone else must be working on this,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find anybody. And I was like, well, I should just do it then.
And then you also have this concept of minimum awesome product versus an MVP that is a more well-known term. Can you talk about that as to what do you mean by a minimum awesome product? Why it's important? Is MVP a bad idea?
The reflection of the minimum viable product, which is like ship early and ship often and get stuff out and get feedback from customers. I think the value of the MVP, the minimum viable product, is to get feedback as soon as possible for engineers that otherwise would might be in their heads and stuck building stuff. And it's generally the right sentiment, but the counterpoint here is that people are really busy in the world, and you really only get like one shot. Like, especially with developers, their first experience with your product ends up becoming like a defining brand moment for you as an organization. You don't have that many of them. And so for us, when we build product, we actually try to make something that's notably impressive. It doesn't mean it needs to be done like feature complete everywhere. It's just a certain part of it has to be impressive. It has to be different. It has to be like unique. And I think if we can't discover that or articulate it, we usually don't understand the market well enough. We don't understand the product well enough. What we're going to build is not going to be unique enough that maybe we shouldn't build it.
Yeah.
Like I think we're only really in the business of doing things that other people aren't doing versus just like following along.
So one of the things I really want to dive into with you is your org design philosophy because it's pretty unique for a company of your scale. So WorkOS now has about 100 employees, only one PM, a very small design team. More than half of the people are engineers, and really engineers are responsible from product design to launch messaging. Correct me wherever I'm wrong. There's no VP of sales. There's no CRO. What's the org design philosophy here? Like, does seem like it's a company run by senior ICs and leads, not VPs.
Yeah, there's no head of engineering today,
Yeah.
or head of sales or head of marketing. We just crossed 100 people a little over a month ago, and about 2/3 of the team is kind of engineering and design and product in some way. I think it's been a reaction to going and hiring a lot of these people in, and then finding actually the biggest impact and what drives stuff forward is really high agency, super capable ICs that can actually do things end to end. So today we have 5 engineering managers that report to me that are driving forward sometimes multiple product areas with a bunch of engineers, working with them on those functions. I spend time directly working with engineers. I meet with almost every engineering team weekly. I meet with our very small marketing team doing like content marketing and events and product marketing. But a lot of it's done by people hands on, not a lot of meetings about strategy or
How many
performative.
direct reports do you have then?
It's a good question. I'm actually not sure,
Yeah.
how many, probably a couple dozen or
Mhm.
so right now.
And that doesn't spread you thin.
No, because people that are really experienced and really senior don't need that much management. They
Mhm.
need alignment. They need, information. They need context to be able to make decisions quickly. They need fast communication, but they don't need management in the sense of like heavy career coaching or figuring out what to do. Accountability is a bit different. I've also found that like you can't really make people work hard. People that don't want to work hard and drive, you can't force them to do it or motivate them some way. It's just this internal drive. And so I think our structure in our operating model is actually just as much a reflection of the type of people we hire as it is the type of choices we've made.
And so maybe double click on your recruiting philosophy then. Like, what do you look for when you're recruiting engineers with this org design in mind?
Yeah. So engineers, I mean, in particular, definitely have to be able to build stuff. They have to build stuff end to end. We look for product engineers that can go talk to users and actually like figure out
Mm.
what to build. But we've also found we can teach people that. It's actually not as important that they've come from a product engineering culture. Probably the most important thing we look for in engineers is curiosity. And it seems obvious, like you'd want curious
Yeah.
people, but there's a lot of jobs actually, including engineering, where you don't need to be that curious. You can just kind of like repeatedly do the same thing again and again and have it work. So we look for people that have come across situations where they, weren't prepared for it or they didn't have information, but they were high agency and they're able to go solve those problems.
In your assessment, do other organizations hire VPs because they think they need to hire VPs? Like, why are other organizations not saying the same thing? Like, let's look for high agency, curious people, product engineers who can own end to end. Everything you just said seems beautiful. Why are other companies not adopting this philosophy?
It's a good question. I don't know. A couple years ago, I think it was when Paul Graham wrote that founder mode essay and Brian Chesky was talking about it. Even before that, People talking about the PM role kind of dissolving and engineers doing it. We at WorkOS, we were kind of like, this is just the way we've been operating. This is just what works with us. So I think there is maybe more acceptance around that as a role. I certainly think that there's a big piece of it where um, companies at earlier stages look to mimic what later stage companies do, or try to emulate what successful organizations, and they back propagate it. The biggest example of this I find is people having typical board meetings. Like a board structure and a board meeting needing to govern a public company is completely different than what you need to do at a
Yeah.
startup when you're finding product market fit.
Yeah.
To apply that is like, it's kind of insane, but yet we still do it. And so I think the same thing happens with, executives, type of executives that are amazing for scaling later stage operations. To come in and build something 0 to 1 is not going
Yeah.
to be the right fit. And so it's just kind of mishiring.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people don't really write about this. I used to think that post product market fit, everything got easier because there aren't blog posts about it.
Yeah.
Everyone writes about pre product market
Yeah.
fit, but not post. I think the reason why people don't write about it is the advice doesn't generalize as
Mm.
well. Pre product market fit, talk to users, eat, sleep,
Yeah.
write code. That's it. Post product market fit, you have 1,000 things to figure out. And every company's a little bit different in
Yeah.
that way. But the era of the builders, the era of like the high agency IC, I think is now, especially
Yeah.
with AI and especially with the acceleration happening in the
Yeah.
industry.
So we want to dive deeper into this AI and the future of engineering org, but let's touch on it here. How has your recruiting changed in this AI era? Like, are you looking for different things on the people you're hiring?
We look for the same stuff. Yeah, our recruiting hasn't changed. We get more random applications because of AI, and we even use AI to filter them out just from efficiency. We look for people to use AI natively in the company. And so when people interview with us, on the engineering side, if they're not using any AI in how they're writing code, it's actually a red flag.
What's the signal that somebody is truly AI native versus just using it on the peripheral or showing it in an interview?
Yeah, I think asking people how it's kind of changed the operating cadence of their
Mm.
life, which sounds like a giant question, but Um, there's some people that are not using it at all. They tend not to apply to tech startups. And then there's some people that are still using it casually. They like, oh, use ChatGPT once in a while to refactor something or reformat it, and that's seems like a cool effect. And then there's people where it's completely changing their capabilities, what they can build. Sometimes you see the bags under their eyes because nights and weekends they're cranking on stuff. They're imagining building
You want to see
agents.
the bags under the eyes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been this funny thing the last few weeks of like the CEOs coming back and writing code and building stuff. And my GitHub contribution graph is turning green from all the side projects I've been building and working on. I think you're looking for people like that are curious. I mean, how can you not be obsessed with this thing? It's like the biggest technology transformation.
Yeah.
If this you're not going to be curious about, like you're probably not curious about a lot of other things in your life. So it's pretty clear, when people are AI pilled or not. And we look for people that want to lean into it, that want to do more of it, that want to figure out how to build a company, with this
Yeah.
as the foundation versus uh, reluctantly being dragged forward.
So let's talk about the operating cadence because it's not just a company of super ICs, but the first 60, 70 people were all distributed, partly because it started during COVID, maybe partly intentional. What's the operating cadence like at the company? What meetings matter? What's the weekly rhythm?
Yeah. So the company is still very remote. We just opened our second office in New York.
Yeah.
So we have one in San Francisco, one in New York. But across those two locations combined, it's actually only about 25% of the company. And even people in San Francisco aren't necessarily commuting in at the office every single
Yeah.
day. We opened offices to have more space for on-sites, for events, for community engagement. Can't even describe how much pizza we've had ordered to our office in the last 6 months. But we still operate the company as a remote organization. It's a distributed organization since the beginning, since pre-COVID. We run the company really on a week-to-week cycle. So not 2 weeks, not sprints, not quarterly, or halves to the year or
So every
something.
week
Every
matters.
week matters. Yeah. So every single Monday, today's Monday, we had a staff meeting this morning and we go through the entire business top to bottom. We kind of break it into two pieces. The first staff meeting is the go-to-market side of it, which is sales, marketing, events, finance, kind of deal pipeline review, and we go through everything that's there. And then the second part is engineering product design. Go through all of the projects, all the teams, and between the two of those, it's about 2.5 to 3 hours total. So it's not like a crazy amount of time. It's like a half day. But on that cadence, we're able to reevaluate the entire organization every single week and create this really strong alignment across all of the team managers and leaders. And the meetings there are a combination of team leads, managers that are in them, as well as really strong ICs, staff, principal level folks that are driving forward projects. So we do that every single week. Those meetings are recorded; they're public to the whole organization. The notes are open. It's not some like secret decision making cabal. It's just a high context, high decision making environment. And then throughout the week, teams will meet. There'll be follow ups from that. There'll be things that we build and ship. There's sub team meetings, like we have a marketing meeting throughout the week. There's multiple deal pipeline reviews as customers are moving through things around recruiting, other project meetings, and then every single Friday we do a full company all hands for an
Hmm.
hour, where we kind of do a similar type of thing to that first
Yeah.
staff meeting where we're running through updates. It's a bit more condensed. It's the
Yeah.
whole organization, so it's kind of like the highlights. But my favorite part of that is demos, where I was showing off stuff that we're building and surfacing it in front of the whole team.
Is there a central doc where everything is kind of comes together and everybody stays in sync given everybody's distributed?
Yeah, that every Friday, the all hands, there's a document that goes with it that we run through. We prefer to do documents instead of slides. And so it has a lot of textual content. Not all of it is like read through. It just is there. It's available for everyone. And we cover the business top to bottom, revenue numbers, customers that are going well, things that are not going well, candidates in the pipeline, people we just hired. We do everything. So one of our operating principles is radical transparency, talked about internally. And I think it's kind of similar to an AI agent. If you don't give it the context, it can't actually make decisions and reason. And so we try to provide all this context to people. And for people working at WorkOS that just joined, if they're an IC on the team, that all hands meeting, it's dense. It's an hour.
Yeah.
It's like you really got to pay attention. It goes fast, but it's so information rich that we find it's just this injection of information about what we're doing right now. And then when we need to change, we can. We can adapt the whole organization to it.
What's the operating cadence or one operating mechanism that outsiders might not know about WorkOS that brings it all together? Is that the Friday meeting? Is that something else?
I think it's probably the speed at which we operate. Yeah, that's usually the most
Is that a
surprising
core
thing.
value or an operating
Yeah, it's one
principle?
of our operating principles. Yeah, it's move fast with intention, we say. But probably the speed. Nat Friedman, who's one of our angel investors,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge fan of his. He told me once I was on a call with him, catching up, and he used to say a week is 2% of the year. And I've adopted this as well now in the company. And so, like on a Monday during a staff meeting, especially for new people that come in, it's a default thing to say in many organizations, we'll follow up on this next week. And we have like an allergic reaction to that as a
Yeah.
team. We're like, no, 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 let's follow up tomorrow. Like a week is 2% of the year. What can we decide by tomorrow? What could we build by like Wednesday or Thursday? What could we ship by the end of this week? Long term success is just short term things
Yeah.
stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
And so the cadence that actually we operate on the week is not the shortest timeline. It's actually the biggest timeline in
Yeah.
a sense.
But is there a cost to moving that fast? What do you give up?
I think so. It can feel thrashy sometimes if you change direction too frequently. You also give up some amount of legibility
Mm.
across the organizations. One of my favorite books is this book called Seeing Like a State. And one of the tenets of it is that like the state, like the government or an organization is designed around creating legibility in systems. The perspective of the state is to impose something that isn't actually the best for the citizens or the output of the organization, but the best to be the most reasoned, from a viewpoint. And so I think in terms of moving fast, one of the things you can give up is this feeling of kind of knowingness about the whole organizational legibility, knowing what everybody is doing. If your core tenant is you need to have like perfect clarity in what all the tasks people are doing, your fastest you'll move is the communication speed across the whole organization, which is slow,
Yeah.
right? So you have to push decision making locally, or you have to like get really involved, like really hands on. Like for me, rather than waiting for engineering managers to surface things up, I'll go work hands on with engineers to shortcut it. And building an organization where that is like actually exciting and a good way to work versus something that's like scary or not a good way to work. I think that's just culturally a hard thing for folks to
But
do.
is there an intensity there that people self-select into? It seems like culturally that comes with the speed.
Yes and no. Engineers always like moving fast. I've never met it. I mean, there's things where we don't move
Yeah.
fast, like when we make API changes or infrastructure changes. There's a project we worked on that took us over a year to roll out.
Yeah.
Because we were very methodical about how we did it,
Yeah.
to not have any issue with our customers. But generally, speed is something people are drawn towards. I think the place where people get stuck is this idea of like like hire smart people and get out of their way. That's this like phrase that's often used. And I don't think you should hire great people and get in their way. I don't think you should ever get in people's way. Um, but there's a version of this that's like hire great people and unblock them as fast as possible and give them deep context and
Yeah.
help them be really successful. That is much more hands on. And it requires also managers to have a harder job.
Yeah.
Like managers have to be driving forward a ton of the context. They have to be really high agency themselves. The job of the manager is way harder in this type of environment. Way, way, way harder. And there's just not that many managers that can do that. Realistically, I think it's the reason why they're more impactful and generally they get paid more than ICs too. So yeah, so it is self-selecting in that way in a bit. But we've also found we can teach people to operate like
Yeah.
this.
So let's talk about brand. Developer companies typically do not invest in brand the way you have. You have MCP nights, especially in the last couple of years. It does seem like there's this internal phrase you guys have mentioned: "WorkOS is everywhere," and it's really been everywhere. When did you decide WorkOS needs to be the brand that it has become today? What was the impetus, and was that something that was core to your philosophy about when you got started, or you learned along the way?
So brand has always been very, very important to me. And I think generally like design, like product design, product experience. I just never really wanted to build anything I wasn't proud of. And
Mm.
so a big part of that was the brand and communication of it. So even from the very beginning, we were obsessing around the visuals and look and feel and the communication style of things. And to me, brand and design, it goes down into the copywriting,
Yeah.
the text that's on your homepage. It's very challenging to get right. It's one of those things that when it all locks in together, it
Mm.
it feels good and you kind of know it.
Yeah.
But up until that moment, it's awkward, it doesn't feel good, and it's painful to create. Brand has always been really important. I would say like in the last year, maybe 2 years, we've invested a lot more in it as we've scaled. And one of the reasons why, I think we started having a few more competitors that started just like, trash talking us, honestly, like, especially with VCs. They were like saying we weren't doing well and just the stuff that just like wasn't true. And before that, we were pretty heads down. I mean, we're an infrastructure
Mm.
company providing like authentication security stuff. We're not the star of the show. We're not in the limelight. We don't need to have the biggest attention on us. But it really bothered me that someone else was telling our story instead of us. And I thought it did a really pretty big disservice to the amazing engineers we have that are just like laboring over this. And suddenly someone else gets to go say that we're not doing well. And so part of it was just my reaction to that saying, I want to tell our story a bit more broadly. And then we found it ended up being really effective because customers got more excited about it. I started doing these customer weeks where I would just celebrate people that launched on the platform and started using our stuff. And it has just compounded. If you look at our customer base today, it would be like a top decile VC firm, it's incredible. And the pattern across all of that has just been this like relentless focus on the product. And then the marketing has like followed from
Yeah.
that.
It's like that famous Michael Jordan theme, and I took that personally. It
I
sounds like
did.
that what happened to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try
Don't
not to
mess with this guy.
start
Yeah.
cursing, but it's a little bit of like a mama bear. It's like you came after this thing that we've been like,
Yeah.
laboring over trying to create greatness,
Yeah.
and we're gonna defend it. We get fierce around that kind of thing, and fiercely supporting our customers too. Like we are the best product in the category, and we'll stand by that. So I think that's part of it. On the brand side, though, like you mentioned the MCP night, there's another piece of this that's just kind of like experimental. So MCP about a year ago, I started getting like kind of obsessed with it. It's this like new protocol that came out from Anthropic. People were demoing it. I go to tons of like meetups and hackathons and evening events. And so we decided to do an event all about showcasing that MCP. And we got hundreds of developers to show up. And it was this amazing kind of super meetup mini conference. We ended up doing 3 of them last year. The last one, it was our holiday special. It's 700 people at the Regency Ballroom. I like wore a tuxedo and was standing on stage talking about like, this AI model protocol, stuff. It's weird. And so there's a piece of our branding and sort of event marketing that comes together that I think for us is just like a celebration of technology and builders. Like the company is made for engineers. We love making things for other builders. Like we will do stuff that's just like cool and interesting to do. And at another type of business, you might have to just justify it, or you might have to like say how many MQLs did we drive with this type of thing. to some degree, we just follow our nose on things that's really interesting and great to do. And that has led us to discover what products to build. It's led us to find other customers, partners. It's led us to hire people. It's just kind of an expression of our love for making things for other builders.
So it is a engineering driven company. We've established that in this conversation also, but we are in this moment of time where the engineering profession is dramatically changing. And so let's talk about the future of engineering. First of all, uh, how has AI impacted the productivity per engineer at WorkOS? Have you seen tangible?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're moving way faster. I mean, I thought we were moving fast before. Now we're moving way faster. I don't know how to quantify it.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to measure stuff, lines of code, speed of PRs and stuff, but it's tangible. I mean, it's clearly not just us, the whole ecosystem is moving faster. It's also more fun. Like people can build things, and express ideas and discover things and learn things much quicker too. Even me personally, I've been spending weekends like hacking on stuff and doing things that otherwise would have taken me like 3 or 4 months, and I can do it in like a weekend. And that's wild. I mean, that's just like it's still hard to wrap my head around. So it really is changing a lot of stuff. We're rebuilding our entire kind of infrastructure and code base around enabling agents to be able to like author code on top of these systems. We're thinking about new products we build for agents in addition to people. We've been doing that for a while, but I think now it's really in the forefront. And even how teams operate. Like I was talking recently with some folks on our team about we only have one PM across 50 some engineers in the organization because engineers are able to do a lot of that product work. I actually think if engineers are able to move faster, we might need more PMs.
Yeah.
Actually, it might go the other way
Yeah.
because we need more people thinking just about product. If one engineer can be like 10 engineers worth of impact of the
Yeah.
previous era, maybe the ratio
Do you
changes.
feel that the number of engineers you have today is now forever going to be stable?
No, we're going to keep growing just because we want the platform to do so many other things. I mean, in the last year and a half, we've launched like 6 major new products. It's like this explosion from just this auth and identity stuff to now we have a product that does fraud and abuse detection. We have a product that does integrations, an encryption product. We launched feature flags. There's more stuff coming in a few weeks. Like we got tons of surface area. And so, just even having 1 or 2 people, usually a good kind of team is like 2 to 3. So if one person's sick, you have a backup working on it. It's more fun to work with other people. But I think we'll have way fewer than, companies in the past. Today, we're a team of 50, 60 engineers. It feels like a team of like 100 some engineers. And I thought to get to this point, the company would need to be 2 to 300 people. We just passed 100 last month. And so I do think like companies generally will need fewer people, but the company headcount growth rate might kind of be similar to the past, just the businesses will grow faster.
Yeah, so that kind of brings to the question of what do you think is the future of engineering orgs? Like if you were starting a new company today, do you think you would answer that question differently and say this the maximum number of engineers for an engineering org would have been 20 or
I
something?
think it depends on your product. So I think there's a ton of products out there which are not selling to developers. What they're selling ultimately is not technology in the sense of bits to technologists. They're selling a service enabled by technology to another business. And those businesses won't need to hire teams of dozens of engineers. Today, there's a lot of companies that have 15 to 30 engineers, 40 engineers. That's kind of their terminal state. And they might have like 150 people in sales. You know, that's not uncommon if you look at kind of the ratios of stabilized organizations. Those engineering teams might be able to be a lot smaller. Maybe it's like 10 engineers or something like that. In the same way, companies don't have like enormous number of accountants on staff or people doing compliance. You have tools that help enable it. So I think that will reduce significantly. At the same time, the ambition of what companies can do and the scale of your impact and how much more is demanded by the market continues to increase. So I think it's actually one of these like Jevons paradox types
Yeah.
of things where engineers will be able to do more and therefore people will need more engineers. But the type of engineer is changing. You'll need
Yeah.
engineers that sort of can manage multiple agents and work across streams. This idea of a product engineer that can do things end to end, I think is a really high leverage with AI systems. Ivan from Notion, he talks about AI being the manager of infinite minds. So I think the way organizations operate will be pretty different. And the era of like, we've already seen this with front end engineering. There used to be people that just did front end engineering, take the Photoshop document it, turn it into a website, that's toast. That's gone. And I think there's going to be other pieces like that.
How has AI changed your operating cadence at WorkOS?
I can consume a lot more information. Well, first of all, I can build stuff again. I can build stuff. I hate Webpack. It's it's like this underlying technology used for like kind of packaging and compiling and transpiling languages. Yeah, it was my first experience like a year and a half ago with Cursor. It just fixed this whole thing for me, and so it's enabled me to get kind of back in the place I love. It's like making stuff and building things. So that's one thing. Is just the joy of engineering is there. I use it a lot as like kind of a deep analysis thought partner. I will pipe into AI tons of different resources we have as a company or things I'm thinking about. I use it really frequently to help synthesize my thoughts around memos that I write to the company internally. That's a pretty unique thing. I used to have that by talking to other people, and I found I can actually get even higher density through different AI systems. Um, and then I think the last thing is like building products for AI and agents. Like no longer is it just building things for people; it's building things for people and machines.
In beyond you, have you just mandated everyone needs to be AI native at WorkOS? Is that a top-down mandate you've given, or how has it changed the rest of the company?
Yeah, it is. It's become one of our operating principles is AI native. And I would say the way we mandate it is not like you have to do this or you're fired. It's more that we all see this being a transformative impact to the organization. And it's something we actively have to push on. So the whole idea of our operating principles as a company is there are behaviors or things that we want to focus on that we won't naturally converge to. We have to intentionally put energy to, for example, build for developers. That's our number one operating principle is developer joy. Most companies don't build for developers because they don't sign the check. And so if you care about developers, you have to make it always a focus in your mind to stay in that space. So I think AI is something similar to that for organizations that have been built up before. Maybe not today for a company started by a bunch of Gen Z, founders that are all AI pilled from the very.
Yeah.
There's just they're swimming in it. It's just native. But for us, we have to rethink things like as we scale our sales team, how do we build that in an AI native way? When we interview people, we look for it. It's in our performance review cycle. Of course, it's in engineering, but it's everywhere in the organization too.
Are you expecting leaders to report how, like non-engineers, so your sales team or customer support team or developer marketing team, to show some semblance of, hey, we've pushed AI nativeness across the board in our
Yeah,
function?
definitely. We expect to see that across people. And I think if I have a conversation with anybody on our team and I say like, walk me through how you're using AI or what you're experimenting with or what you're building or how it's changing your work, and they don't have like some answer to that,
Yeah.
that's going to raise alarm bells, or if they're saying, I think we're doing enough. I think that kind of raises alarm bells because of the speed of how much this is moving. I kind of became a student of, technology and business through starting companies. It's sort of my hobby as well as my job. There's never been any disruptive technology that's been at this scale and moved this fast. There's been things at the scale before, like industrial revolution, printing press, the internet, but nothing that's happened in this compressed time interval.
It's
It's
insane.
it's totally insane. It's so fast that it's like unnatural to reason about. And so you have to like force yourself to re-experience it. A very natural thing for engineers to try something, evaluate it, come to a conclusion, and then have that form the basis of how you have other thoughts. It's very unnatural to say like, I know I looked at this a month ago, but I'm going to forget everything I
Yeah.
realized and come at it with a beginner's mind, like a tabula rasa type of thing. And that's very uncomfortable for people to do, and especially for managers to do as well. So I think it's just as much of a cultural change as it is a technology
Just,
change.
on that point about how fast everything is changing, doesn't it feel sometimes crazy? Like we feel like you feel like we're right in the middle of a science fiction movie or
Oh
something.
yeah,
At this, like, I don't think even in my future I will be ever as excited as I am right now in this 2 to 5 year period. Like, I don't think it is possible to be more excited.
it's wonderful. If I had known this was going to happen, like when I was in college or maybe a little bit earlier, when I was in high school, I actually think I would have been like more excited about my life and my career. Not that I wasn't excited,
Yeah.
but I'd always liked building stuff. I liked the internet. I liked making, stuff and kind of played with Legos as a kid. I'm like a creator, like a maker at heart. But if I had known that this was going to happen and this was coming, like it's the golden era for like
Yeah.
making stuff. And the AI models, like it's a human computer interaction breakthrough
Yeah.
as well. It's not just writing code. It's like
Totally.
the machines now are more human. We can make these things that like truly feel like what science fiction was in the past. It's this unlock. And that to me is just like absolutely thrilling.
Yeah.
It's like I have a hard time sleeping because I just like am so amazed at how incredible it is, and plus the ability to go build stuff. It's like someone just gave me a pile of super Legos, and all of that together at the same time. I have this startup that I was building that's like this enterprise API infrastructure thing that's now is powered by AI, which in hindsight, like kind of makes sense, but previous like was not at all designed for this,
Yeah.
right? So I more than anything, I just feel lucky,
Yeah. Yeah.
lucky that the thing I had is now in the middle. That's just not a stroke of genius. That's luck. And to have the convergence of those two things, it's like a video game plus toy that you can't put down, and then the dopamine hits you get from it. I mean, it's just so cool. I mean, you can have it do anything, and I think going back to what you're talking about at hiring, I kind of look for people that have had that moment, that I've had that realization, or are leaning in that way. And that's, I think it happens for everybody a little bit of a different way.
You're 100% right on this, that some people have had that moment and some just haven't.
I call it
And
being AI pilled. It's
yeah,
kind of like in the
I
Matrix where he
actually,
like
you just said something that's pretty powerful.
takes the red
Yeah.
pill, and I've even talked to people on our team and people from many other companies about how to AI pill other
Yeah.
people, because it's a thing you can actually.
Can you AI pill other people?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely can. Not 100% of the time, but almost always.
But if they have not
Yeah.
AI pilled already before meeting you, is it saying something about their curiosity?
For engineers, for sure. Yeah, I think for engineers, if you're always like looking for a new way to like adapt your craft, and you're not seeking this, generally like it's not that they won't become it, it's that their energy will be more of a like Luddite.
Yeah.
Which teams you want to have this balance of people that are like always looking for the new thing, and then people that are also on the other side that are a little bit more conservative. If you have too much on the one side, it just becomes total chaos and you're really building everything all the time, and it's not a good balance. Um, so I think even from our side, from our team, we have people that are, I wouldn't say more conservative around it, but they're trying to find the right ways to apply it, or not to like introduce, security issues, or not introduce, like performance issues. But even on the security side, like just a month ago, one of our security engineers started using the GPT
Mm.
5.3 high reasoning model to find security vulnerabilities in our product, and actually was able, through like a set of different prompts and through a bunch of prompt engineering, to actually identify stuff. Very weird small edge cases, race conditions, the sequence of things that need to occur for that to be a vulnerability was pretty extreme, but it still found it. It found these like logical issues
Yeah.
in our product. Wasn't ever exploited, ever. But by solving it, made it much more secure. And so I think even with that, with people that are, maybe you wouldn't think of as like the people driving it forward, getting them AI pilled often can lead to the biggest
Yeah.
outcomes. I'm finding that if you talked to me a year ago, I would have probably said, we'll need to go hire a bunch of junior engineers
Yeah.
that are like fully using AI. I've actually found the most senior engineers are the most impactful with it. It's like a super
Interesting.
tool for
Yeah. Yeah.
them
Yeah.
on top. So you definitely can AI pill
Yeah.
anybody, but it's such a transformative technology. Most people have never experienced anything like it. And so they
Yeah.
need a few reps
Yeah.
to get it in.
So what's the new bottleneck in company building?
Knowing what to build, I think, is the hardest thing. Today, for software engineering, you can make pretty much anything. You can make it really fast. And so the question is, what do you do? Like, what do you do next? What do you build? Where do you go? What is your strategy? Where's the stuff moving? I think that's one big piece of it. I think the other thing is understanding your customer really well. These are things that have always mattered in the
Yeah.
past, but the company that can understand its customer better than the competitor will be able to consistently deliver a better product that's a better fit for them sooner. And so it's like deep empathy with the customer and
Yeah.
connection to them in that
Yeah.
way. I think it's those two things. And then speed is, kind of goes back to, can you move fast today? Like if you're not using this stuff, even if you're moving 10% slower, that compounds over time. You'll be smoked by somebody else
Yeah.
moving quickly. And
Yeah.
so speed is everything.
So let's shift gears towards culture. So you describe WorkOS as a place of low oversight but high expectations, right? And that sounds great on paper, but in practice, like how do you avoid micromanagement then, or do you not?
Yeah, probably if you ask people on the team, like we don't avoid micromanagement. It's not really a dirty word on our team. I think micromanagement generally gets a bad reputation because the way people experience it is managers that come in that have no context, that don't seek to learn or understand anything, and just like say some random thing. And then the ICs are left being like, well, what do I do with that? This person is coming in making a decision. They don't know what's going on. So in order to have that type of, hands-on work from leadership, I think it requires like the management leadership to be really well informed, really, really well informed. I'm talking like reading hundreds of support messages every day, deeply understanding the customer, like doing more work than anybody else in the whole organization. I spend a lot of my evenings watching what I call WorkOS TV. I go watch customer calls. I get on my exercise bike. I jailbroke my Peloton so I can use it to watch gong calls, and I'll spin on the Peloton bike and watch them at 2x, just so I'm like saturating my brain with as much as possible. I think if you can do that, you have the opportunity to get in and do more of like micro leadership. Be like, this very specific thing you're deciding, I think we should go this other direction because this. And if you're able to explain why and provide the context to people, I've actually found that engineers want that. They don't want to build the wrong thing. They don't want to
Yeah.
go in the wrong direction. They don't want to be handed a spec and just to go make it.
Yeah.
They want to be provided more information and context into it. So it's really this like hyper collaborative environment, and then with high agency.
Yeah.
Low process. People take things end to end. Engineers are responsible for product shaping. They're responsible for writing the change log for the announcement, for following up the customers that asked about it, for ensuring it's successful. You're not just like a code monkey in the middle. You do the end to end thing.
As this conversation has played out, it's clear that you have a lot of intentionality around culture and all of that, right? Like it's a distributed org, senior ICs, high agencies at the center of it, but even the way you reframe micromanagement to micro leadership just now. In a distributed org where people are all separate, like how did you ensure this is uniformly getting distributed as as cultural norms and the cohesion of operating principles coming together? Were there rituals? Is it just over communicating week after week? What brought it all together as new people are joining, but they're not in the same office?
Yeah, part of it is writing it down. So operating principles, living them. It's a reflection of actually how we were doing stuff, not just aspirational, but actually how we're operating day to day. Um, I think another piece of it is just time.
Mm,
Like as a 7-year-old company, we've just had the ability to continue reinforcing things that work really well. I think it's very hard to build culture super fast.
mm,
You just don't get the density
mm,
that of the stuff that works.
mm,
And so I don't know a way to like speed run it. A lot of the way that we operate and the cultural practices we have are actually extremely well suited to the AI era, which again is just kind of happenstance. I think of how we're like our product engineering function is really high leverage with AI. Um, that's part of it. We do some stuff where we bring the whole team together every 6 months or so. We do sub team gatherings more frequently. That's why what we use these offices for. We do a lot of events, but early on, we didn't do that. We were, I think our first onsite was delayed due to COVID. We were
yeah.
going to do it. And so the thing that brings people together more cohesively, I actually think is building the product. Like the center point of the company, the center point of the culture should not be we all go get drinks and do karaoke together. It shouldn't be we all get fat bonuses, when we hit some revenue number. It should be about the customer, about like the reason what you're providing and like why that's impactful to the world and what satisfaction you get out by that infinite game,
Yeah.
that you're searching. And I think all of our operating principles and the cohesion of the company is really centers around like why we should exist in the world and the type of businesses we work with.
Yeah.
That's the most durable. That's the most powerful over
Yeah.
time.
I want to talk about navigating some tough times, and some of this is being informed by me having a little bit of a front row seat to your journey. So, back in 2020, March 2020, you were planning to launch WorkOS, the first product going out in March 2020 at SaaStr. And then COVID happens, lockdown start, that event is, I think, gone, and the whole launch plan is gone. Like, what happens next?
Yeah, we were going to launch it. I'm trying to remember. I think SaaStr was going to be in like April or May or something. And so it got
Yeah.
canceled, you know. I remember like Coachella got canceled and that same day SaaStr got canceled.
Yeah.
Um,
The
and
two most
so
important events for you
exactly,
at the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually never been to Coachella,
Yeah.
but SaaStr I've gone to. And I was like, we're SaaS for SaaS, you know, it's a perfect place to launch it.
Yeah.
You know, we were in stealth at the time, we had a small team. And so we just launched it through like Twitter and Hacker News and did really well there. If you go back and look at the Hacker News launch thread, it's actually like pretty good like time capsule of the company. Now, yeah, 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago. I would say like that launch was due to us looking at the bank account and saying, "Hey, we raised a year and a half of money, and we're going to be out of money by the end of the year. Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
get it moving." And so sometimes, you know, the market plays your hand, you
Yeah.
know, like or the market deals you a hand, and your job is to play it. And um, you know, I often feel it's a little bit like surfing. I'm like a pretty terrible surfer, but I really like doing it. And especially here in San Francisco, if you go surf out at Ocean Beach, it's pretty brutal. Like, you know, it's a hard paddle out. The wave is heavy. It's cold. You are a small part of the
Yeah.
machine that's happening of the ecosystem. All you can do is control like where you are and how you move. But the power is in the ocean. And I think that's kind of like the market. Like you can only surf the wave that's there or not and deal with the conditions that's in front of you. And so COVID was just like another one of those for us. And there's been big ones and small ones. I think COVID in particular for we all experienced it at the
Yeah.
same time and you know and it had different impacts in all of our lives, but generally the impact was kind of the same. We were all kind of stuck and locked down. It was a giant shared traumatic experience for all of
Yeah.
society, which typically only occurs during like natural disaster or famine or war. It's a very interesting, different type of thing. So that was challenging for sure. We were already a remote company, and so our operating model didn't change.
Okay.
In fact, it was actually identical. But of course, enormously stressful for everybody. Their kids can't go to school. Now your partner's at home and you're working alone. It's like everything else is
Yeah.
different. So it's very challenging
Yeah.
in that regard.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. Like your plan was to launch in April and then raise a Series A in June, July based on the launch metrics. And then you decided, uh, look, I don't know where the world is in 3 months. I need to do both of these in parallel. I think you literally did a launch, and then 2 weeks later you were then raising a Series A. Walk us through that.
So back, you know, this is like March of 2020. Lockdown occurs. People are saying it's gonna be 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks or something, which of course we know now is like
Yeah.
it's ludicrous. Um, when I was actually an undergrad at MIT, my freshman class I did, the freshman consulting seminar class, was about the Spanish pandemic flu.
Mm.
And we actually wrote a report on how the MIT Institute would respond to a pandemic flu. So I went back and read my old paper and I texted some friends and we expected it would take 2 years for the world to recover and, you know, which is about what it took, you know? So I saw that and I was like, "We're gonna go into an economic winter. Market's gonna crash. It's just like catastrophic, you know, effect on the world." And so said, "We need to launch to get the product out there, and I need to go raise money so I can continue to float the company if the market's gonna bottom out." We had a great outcome in terms of the financing. I mean, in terms of the partners we worked with, the amount we raised and everything. But for a lot of the firms that I went and talked to, it was the first time they'd ever done
Yeah.
partner meetings over Zoom. I mean, I'd been living over Zoom, so I was
Yeah.
fine, you
Yeah.
know, but they didn't know really what to do. And I think that's kind of the thing too, is like when you make a decision, the important thing is to decide and then execute on that
Yeah.
when the world
in,
changes.
in those moments, do you, once you've decided, you stop feeling the stress and you're just acting, or does the anxiety live in the back when you know this is going to be a hard race? Most VCs are not used to making Zoom based decisions.
It's still really intense and stressful. I was thinking, oh, this weekend I went skiing. There was a big storm up in
Yeah.
Tahoe, and I went and climbed and skied this thing at Palisades that I always wanted to. And you're looking over the edge and like when you commit to do it, it's not like you commit and then it's smooth sailing.
Yeah.
It's like you commit and then you have to be really fully
Yeah.
present for the next however many seconds you're through it. It's kind of like that. Like you have to be really, really
Yeah.
intensely in it. But I actually find that those situations where like the world changes or you learn something drastically different and you have to make a change, it's actually a really easy decision. The decision is clear because the trade-off is death.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're if you're skiing a line and the trade-off of crashing is like, you know, you're going to hurt yourself. It's very easy decision to
Yeah.
work to not crash and to be very focused and present. I think the bigger challenge is when the trade-offs are more like 51-49. How do you make those types of trade-offs? Or where it's not clear, it's blurry, or where you're getting different types of information. But in situations where the decisions have been clear, the act of going through the financing, like the Series A raising it, it was hell. It was really
Yeah.
hard. It was very different than every other financing. It was hard to get information. It was hard to converge to the end financing process. There's a lot of lack of clarity around like where the market was going to
Yeah.
be, all that stuff. But the decision to do it at that moment wasn't a
Yeah.
hard decision. It was actually pretty straightforward.
COVID, you were still a small team, but since then, if you've had some tough times or tough weeks, can you talk about how you communicate to the rest of it? Sounds like you're good at psyche management. Like it's a binary. I have to make this happen. I'm already in the arena, so I have to make this Series A happen. Right? It gives you a little bit of clarity. But how do you communicate to your team during tough times?
Yeah, I think there's types of decisions that take longer to make because you're trying to gather more and more information. And, the ideal time to make a decision generally is as late as possible. At the last possible moment
Mhm.
is the ideal time because by that moment you have gathered as much data as you can to be as well informed. The painful thing is at that last possible moment, it's kind of like hiring. You want to hire someone at the last possible
Yeah.
moment that you need them to do a job, but it's very painful at that moment too. And so I think that act of information gathering and weighing the trade-offs can take a long period of time. And I'm often seeking information from our team and other people when I'm doing that. What products to build? What is working in the market? What isn't? What are we experimenting with? What type of people are we hiring? People we just hired, are they working out or not? Not everyone onboards successfully, and we want everyone to be successful, but you're kind of just constantly trying to figure out how the
Yeah.
organization's health is behaving. But I think once you make a decision, what I have found, I've actually experimented with both directions, like either giving people the information and not, like on personnel stuff, like why we let somebody go or something. And I've generally found that if you have folks that are high agency and that context is helpful. If you're just like, this is why,
Yeah.
we're doing it this way. There was a product that we deprecated last year that we were very excited about. We put a bunch of energy into it a few years ago. We built up all the stuff, and then ultimately it didn't work. And so I decided to spin it down, recycle it. We actually rebuilt it and just relaunched it. Now it's doing a lot
Yeah.
better. But I told the team, I was like, hey, this thing didn't get product market fit. Here's why. This. But it was tough. It was kind of a like 51-49 for a long time. Like, is it working out? Is it not? We're
Yeah.
getting some interest. It's not quite enough. It's like it took a while to come to that
Yeah.
decision point. So yeah, the ones that are the big decisions, I often find generally like the information is pretty clear
Yeah.
around it, but the smaller ones are harder.
Let's talk about the inner game. So, because you've touched on this a little bit, how has your role as a founder and CEO evolved from managing a couple dozen people to now a 100-person company?
I think one of the things I mentioned around the culture building of the company over time. Now that we're 7 years in, there's a lot of people in the organization that have worked here for many years, many years. And I wouldn't say they all act like me, thankfully, but we all kind of think in a similar ish way. I think we've built this sort of like brain trust where there's an operating way that we know how to interface with each other and can almost simulate like what the other person is going to think. And so you can run that in your head and be like, oh, I should probably just do it this way because these other two people would suggest this and I should try it, in this fashion. And so that allows us to act like a cohesive organization, cohesive team. Feels a little bit like, watching like synchronized, watching the Olympics, like synchronized, dancers or skaters or people racing.
Have you had to change your management style though as the company has evolved?
Definitely. I think I've gotten better at it. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's probably more than style. It's just like technique, which you hope by over time you get better and better at
Yeah.
doing it. I think also I've just learned a lot more stuff. One of the reasons I like this job, like the kind of company building mode, is it's kind of the perfect job if you are just like insatiable for
Yeah.
for learning stuff. Because constantly, well, maybe I'll describe it as this. So there's this management philosophy called the Peter Principle, which I think it was like in a Dilbert cartoon, and it means people rise to their level of incompetence.
Yeah.
So you stop getting promoted at the moment you're bad at your job. And it's just this idea that like in a stable organization, everyone kind of sucks at
Mhm.
management. I think there's this thing called I call it the reverse Peter principle, where as a founder, your job is to go and incubate new functions. So if you don't have anybody in marketing, congratulations, your job is to go figure out marketing as the founder. And so you go spend all of this time trying to learn about what is good marketing, what is marketing for your organization, and you suck at it for a really long time. And then right at the moment you start getting good at it, is the moment you hire somebody. And so your job is actually one where you're constantly not very good at it. And it's really the founding role, the founder CEO is really the only role in the company where you consistently are allowed to be bad at whatever it is you're doing
Yeah.
because you're incubating the function. I would never be hired as a VP of marketing somewhere or a VP of sales, but I can kind of act as like a bad one for a while to learn enough because I bring all this other context in the organization and I'm there to do the job, you know. And so for that, you're kind of always a beginner and always learning, and
Yeah.
it's sort of a painful existence
Yeah.
if you like to do things well. But on the other side, it's actually like really stimulating, and you're constantly kind of turning over
Yeah.
things in your mind, and it requires having I think an extreme growth mindset. You know, people talk about growth mindset where you're looking for adaptation and learning and change, and you sort of lean into things that feel uncomfortable in conflict. I think to do this, you have to have an extreme version of that
Yeah. Yeah.
and be willing to like fall on your face
Yeah. Yeah.
all the
All the time.
time, all the
Yeah.
time. It's like getting punched in the face every day.
How
Yeah.
do you manage your psyche and health when you're getting punched in the face all the time?
Yeah. My perspective around it has shifted over the years. Like, I think early on, my reaction to that struggling, the getting punched in the face was sort of one of why me? like like I was the victim of the situation, or it was like so hard because poor me,
Yeah.
that I my team's not strong enough. I hired this person who's not doing well. No, customers don't like our product, whatever the excuse is, That's one way to live your life. It's like to have that perspective. I think it's actually just like a mindset shift. Like if you can instead just think of like the struggle as being more of like an opportunity, like a gift, like a privilege. Just the reframing of that actually makes it like something you can stomach. And your reality can be the same, in terms of what you actually have to do day to day. But it's just such a more pleasant way to go through
Yeah.
things. And it turns things that otherwise are suffering into things that like it might be hard. It's not easier to do.
Yeah.
It still can be extremely challenging. It's like adding rocks to your backpack when you're walking around if you just have this negative aspect to it.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons as well when we hire people, we look for optimists. Like pessimists can be successful in the world, but it's just so much more, enjoyable to do things with optimists
Yeah.
around the table, and just they bring things up. They
Yeah.
raise people up versus pulling them down. And so I think that mindset shift is actually one of the things that it's happened over the last, 10 years. And I don't think I have any like specific moment it occurred or some mindfulness practice or anything, but just trying to look at those challenges as like opportunity
Yeah.
versus burden makes me excited to wake up every day and excited for this change.
Billie Jean King from tennis has this quote that says, "Pressure is a privilege," which is kind of like a rephrasing of what you're saying in terms of the gift.
Startups are kind of like the extreme sports version
Yeah.
of business.
Yeah.
It's the most extreme, in a tech startup in AI. It's the most extreme, most dynamic, most fast evolving. And if you're the CEO or you haven't done the job before, you're like in a fresh situation every single
Yeah.
day. What an extraordinary gift,
Yeah.
to have. And I think like for this job, I don't know if I would ever be hired to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, how could anybody be seen to be?
Would you hire yourself
I
kind
don't
of thing?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how would you even interview people
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
right? But to have the privilege to do that, it's not easy, but it's an extraordinary opportunity. And I think about it all the time with like investors we have to have the privilege to do that. I feel an immense responsibility to our shareholders and
Yeah.
investors to do that. I take it really seriously. It also, I think, when you frame it as that learning growth mindset, it's also really fun.
Yeah.
Like there's no speed limit to how fast you can learn. It's just you.
Yeah.
It's like athletics, like running. I always love recycling or things. I always love these sports where like there's no
It's you
limit.
against you.
It's you against you. It's you
Yeah.
against the clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. And that's just for some people. I mean, if you wake up every day and look at that, it's terrible. But in other ways, you can look at that. It feels like the most pure. If you frame it in that way, it's pretty.
Yeah.
It can be the job of a lifetime.
Our next section is a quick fire round. So
Great,
you
let's do
ready?
it. Let's do it.
Okay. Um, a role you hired too early for.
Head of sales. There's this idea that once you reach like 1 million in ARR, go hire a salesperson, and at the same time, people say the three first head of sales you hires are all going to be bad.
Yeah.
Which is like, why am I spending time doing this? I actually think founders should run the sales process for much longer than people think, up to like tens of millions in ARR. Because sales is where you get the juice out of the market. It's where you learn where to take stuff. It's the most information dense part of the whole organization. The only reason I'm hiring a head of sales right now is because I just don't have enough hours in the day because I have to run all this other stuff. But if I could, I would keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's really, really high leverage. So I think that's one people should hold off
Yeah.
on until much later.
Red flag you never ignore when recruiting now.
Curiosity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Lack of,
Lack
lack
of
of, yeah.
curiosity. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lack of curiosity. You can get at it from a lot of different ways, but if someone's not curious, they're not going to be able to adapt. And like the only thing I can guarantee is the world's going to be different in a year or two. And so they have to be curious, and I can't teach them.
Yeah.
I can't teach them to be
Yeah.
curious. Yeah.
Something you've changed your mind on or about company building.
I used to think that the way to scale was to hire experts that had done it before
Yeah.
and plop them in and have them grow and scale. And I don't think that's not useful, but I think it needs to be combined with people that come at things from fresh eyes. And you need both of these ingredients together. The idea that once you find product market fit, just go to this like library of people who have done it and throw them in and turn the crank. It's actually not how it works. And thankfully, I think that's actually kind of boring to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a much more creative, interesting piece of it. So um, people can learn almost anything.
What scares you the most about the next 2 years?
I'm generally like an optimist. So
Yeah.
so things don't I think scare me as most. I would say like the thing when I started this year, our management team, the thing I was the most concerned about was that this company was founded in a pre-AI era. And even our growth was great, like pre-AI. But now like the laws of physics are different and what you can do is different. And even with all we've done to adapt the business to this, my biggest concern was like we're still holding on to something from that previous era around how we're behaving and operating. We're not letting go of it. And we don't know what that is. It's just so much of a shift. And, if you're the dinosaur, you don't know you're the dinosaur.
Yeah.
I think you're not
So
aware
being
of
the
that.
dinosaur or potentially being the dinosaur scares you.
Yeah. Or like what part of me or part
Is
of our
still,
operating model is not that.
yeah.
And it requires you to go seek out like, it's like that mirror. Like, what is the thing you're not doing that you're scared of, that you're scared of making the change and push through that, reinvent yourself. It's like an unknown unknown.
Okay. Last one. What would you build if you weren't building this?
So weirdly, I used to have all these different ideas for stuff, and so many of them have converged into this company. And I don't totally know why. I mean, I had ideas for like aviation, electric airplanes, and robotics, and I think voice AI is going to be like a huge, huge thing. There are so many industries I think that are like slow to pick up the transformation in AI, and places where there could be like an enormous leap ahead in a small amount of time.
Yeah.
And I think those are places where probably I would try to go seed a bunch of companies and get
Yeah.
them going. Like one of them, my dad's a retired physician. My sister's a dermatologist, as doctor. So I see this stuff in the medical world, and that's a thing that like helps people directly. It's like hands like we build things for other developers building stuff, but that's the thing. It changes quality of life. And healthcare in the United States, it's so expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just we have the best care in the world. We pay for it, And so there's places like this where there's just such an enormous opportunity to bring everybody up and lower the cost at the same time. And there's dozens of things like that with AI.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go work on something like that. Yeah.
Closing question. So I have the same two closing questions for every guest. So first one is, with everything that's happening in the world today with AI, what do you think our world looks like in 10 years? I know it's a broad question, but take it wherever.
I think technology continues to be more and more human. Like we'll look back on what we use today and there'll be these like clunky devices that we had to tap and stare at in these different ways. And technology will just be like more natively integrated with us. We'll have AGI. It'll be a big transformative thing, but it also won't feel like that big of a deal. I think there's versions of AGI we have today and how you search Google. If you went back to like the 50s and you showed somebody a Google search box, they would consider that AGI. If you showed them a Waymo, they would consider that impossible
Yeah.
AGI. And so there'll be things like that that we'll continue to have across a bunch of different areas. Labor is going to be disrupted in this like enormous way, I think for the better,
Mhm.
for the world. And I think just quality of life will like continue to go really well. But I also don't know the future of like what does a company mean? If you can
Yeah.
have like a really small number of people just do something, I don't know. In the past, there used to be all these like companies that existed for all these small things that don't really exist. Like travel agent doesn't really exist
Yeah. Yeah.
anymore, you know? And it's not like because we lost travel agents as a
Yeah.
business, nobody travels anymore. In fact, more people travel. In fact,
Mm.
they have better experiences,
Yeah.
you know? So as an optimist, I think things are just generally going to get better. And what I'm hoping is that these tools continue to unlock more creativity for people and more expression for
Yeah.
people and more problem solving. And we can just continue to accelerate on that.
And then last question is, knowing everything you know today about life and how life works and everything that's going on in the world with AI, what would be the singular piece of advice you'd give to your 25-year-old self?
Yeah. So 25 years ago, starting that first startup or had started out of school, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I fit in the world based on how other people described the way the world worked. And one block for this was actually around sales. We were talking about doing sales. You know, I studied computer science at like MIT, had a CS degree, and I started a startup. And the narrative was always like, you go hire the sales guy. Like, certainly you can't learn to do that. Bring in the business professionals, you know, like the MIT guy always goes and hires the sales guy to go run it. And so it was just this thing in my head that like, I don't have those skills. I won't be able to have those skills. And when I actually decided to learn it, which was during WorkOS during this company, it was challenging at first, but I figured it out, you know, and read all the books and met all the people and learned all this stuff. And so I think like in a weird way, like that was actually this big blocker to me, just like learning in that way. And so I would say is like, don't let others define you. Don't let others, their market or something define you or what you know or who you can be. You know, don't let somebody tell you you can't run that fast. Prove it for yourself, you know, because nobody knows you better than you do.
Yeah.
And generally their assessment, like they don't even have that much information to make it
Yeah.
on. And so why not actually see if it's possible or not? Um, so yeah.
Cool. That's a great note for us
Cool.
to end at. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Awesome, man. Thank you.